showing what happens with these things. We'll have a couple of examples that Fernando will explain.
Here we must explain what we mean by let me see
It's a single culture, a single space, and there will be two cases. One in which there is no learning by the agents, and one in which there will be.
So in this world we have only one group, the red one, it's called the red one, and we have the agents with one property is called preference. So it's something like the kind of information that they like, and in this model, preferences and message has the same structure. They will be in this version two-dimensional vectors, so they have only two components. And then in this world we see here more or less we can see like this one is the two-dimensional space, and in this case we have here the amount, the kind of message that the agents will have, and in this case this will be the preferences. So we can define, we can draw more or less in which part of the world we want the message and in which one we want the preferences. Okay, there are a lot of information here. In this case, in this part, we have the tendency of the agents. We have seen that the agents can act as a dominant.
Dominant when you try to control the message, or more kind of actor or creative person when you just change it. This is represented by 0 or 1, but you can act in every step of the evolution of the world. You can act from one or two or the other, and this will be depending on how is your tendency. For example, if your tendency is zero, then you will act more or less all the time as a dominant agent, and if it's 1, you will act as a creative one. So in this case, with this cube, you can see more or less how many people will be with tendency 0 or how many people will be with tendency 1. More things in this group, you can define the population of the group. In this case, it's exactly 330. The learning factor, because the people can change the preferences depending on the message they receive. So in this case, with factor 0, it means that it will not learn at all. So the preferences will not change. And the memory size of the group, of every agent, in this case 11. Okay, but this is the editor of the world. We have one. So there you can do whatever you want depending on what you can test.
We have the engine, so we do the world, the same one. Here is the world. It's all the world possible. They will move around all the area, and thanks. This red one. Okay. These little red people are our population, and the red color depends on the tendency. So it's more darker, will be more dominant, and it's brighter, will be more creative, lighter. Okay, so we have here, this is more or less the real world. They move around, and if they meet each other, then they will exchange the information. We have when we start the simulation, we have the messages that we saw in the other part here. And if we start to move, oops, sorry. Oops. Okay. They start to move, and they change something. We can see here how the messages are moving, because they change with each other. So when I change the message, when I receive the message, I change because of my preferences. So I see here how the messages are moving. We see here how the preferences are moving, because there is no learning, there is no move in the preferences. And we see here so something that we call more or less the culture. Or
cultural area that is getting formed.
The cultural area is computed in the following way. If some message is in the same area, then they leave something like
A trace.
trace in this area, in this part. But you lose, if this area is not used again with other messages, then it lose this area. So then what we see is more or less the part of the message, the area of the message that are always with some kind of information. So if two messages are more or less similar, then this patch, this area, will be brighter. So more or less is the area what we call the cultural information of the society. Yes, okay, if we see the same one but using the word 3 is exactly the same, but we have introduced some learning factor. So now if we use this one in the simulation, we see that the preferences move to the part where is the message, because they learn from the message. In this case, because the preferences are because the learning is not so fast, we see that the culture is more or less in the same area, but a little bit higher, not so in the corner. Okay, this is the single one. To continue with the.
Okay, so that's what happens in this example of single culture and a single group, and you will see that there are always individuals a little in the margins of the culture. But the very fact that communication and exchange of information is underway seems to get all the information concentrated with the message, with the agents around a specific zone. In this case, this one. So what we have done is create this editor of cultural worlds in which you define whatever you want in the world, and you can define the areas where the members of every group will move when you go from one culture to more than one, the borders that they will be able to cross or not, how they're going to cross it, how many of them will cross it, and for every group you can decide population, the memory size, the initial contents of the memory, the initial preferences, the learning factors, and the tendency distribution in terms of controlling or playing with whatever they have. And if you want to place locations of, repositories of information, you can decide the location if you are going to use any of those.